do the keynote for this track, we have Dr. Niladri and Dr. Surabhi Prakash. May I welcome you on the stage. Dr. Niladri is the CEO of Excellentropy Tea Limited and an international author, guest speaker at many global conferences, and comes with specialization in many other topics, including DevSecOps and SRE. Dr. Surabhi Prakash comes with 17 plus years of experience in multicultural startup and high growth environments. She's an OKR coach and a ESG professional, among many other hats she wears. So welcome to both of you, and we'll start off with an awesome session to begin this track.
Thank you, Padma. Hi, everyone. So sustainable IT is, I think, a new area that we are looking at. And I can see that also in the number of people here. Okay, so let's start.
Good morning, everyone. We are here to present a talk on a subject which is very close to our heart. And as an organization, our intent is to empower the IT community to build a greener and livable future. And that is why sustainable digital strategy is paving the way for a greener future. So for last 20 years, we are quite used to hear the term digital and its benefits. But why suddenly sustainable plus digital? Dr. Niladri, would you like to tell why suddenly sustainable plus digital?
Hi. Good morning. Today we find that most of the organizations are moving towards digital transformation. And by doing so, we are having more and more carbon footprints being created, which is obvious. And we need to start looking at it in a way where we can take the advantage of digital transformation as well as make sure that we are sustainable. We do not have that much of a negative effect on our planet, right? So, if you look at it, we would like to talk about sustainability and digital transformation. So what we are saying is that we have to move from digital transformation to sustainable digital transformation. Like you have seen in cybersecurity, it is not just at one point, but it is in multiple areas that we have to cover. It has to be baked in throughout in the life cycle of our digital transformation. We have to similarly bake in the sustainability aspect in the entire life cycle of the digital transformation, starting from the strategy till we are in the end of closing, right? So this requires us to think in a different way. This requires us to think in terms of how we are going to architect our systems. This requires us to think in terms of even how we are creating our products and services. Does any of you know how much of energy you consume by using your laptop in a year? Have anybody calculated that? I use a MacBook Pro. It's 100 watt. Using that, if I am saying that I am using it 8 hours per day for 300 days in a year, I am using 240 kilowatt hours of energy. If I take a US kind of a situation, not like India or Singapore, where US and is much greener compared to Singapore and India as of now. If you look at that, it requires me to have 10.3 fully grown trees to absorb the kind of carbon emission that I do just by using my laptop, right? So we need to change that. We need to make sure that whatever we are doing, we are going to use it in the right manner.
So let's talk a bit about GHG protocol.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, if you look at what we are talking about here is, first of all, we have understood why sustainable IT, but what is that? We hear about sustainability all across, but what we don't hear much is the sustainable IT part of it. And one of the major challenges that we see is that we do not really understand that we have to look at IT to be one factor which is creating a huge amount of carbon footprint. Today, we are nearly around 4% of the overall global carbon footprint emission, which is more than the combination of carbon footprint created by aviation, that is air travel, railways, and one more. So it's a huge, and it is increasing exponentially. And now that we use chat GPT kind of things and more LLM models, you will find that we are doing it much more. Now, if you look at the rules and regulations that are coming in, if you look at the countries have committed themselves to the world that they are going to reduce the carbon footprint. They are going to try and achieve that 2-degree. I mean, it was supposed to be 1.5. I think it's already breached 2-degree temperature increase than the industrial era. We are nearing that. We may breach that if we do not do something there. And if you look at these organizations which are not manufacturing, like for example, the banks, the other e-commerce kind of sites and all, where manufacturing is not there, their IT plays a very, very significant role in carbon emission. And IT cannot stay away. And you know that, for example, in Singapore, next year, even the listed companies will also have to declare their ESG. And their IT-related carbon emission and all have to be declared. Because Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions for these companies are highly from the IT part of it.
Yeah.
So, looking at that, what we need to look at is that we are talking about the GHG protocol. Now, what is that? It is basically 3 types of emissions that we are trying to take care of, right? Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. Scope 1 is the direct one, Scope 2 is indirect, and Scope 3 is further indirect. You want to explain?
Yeah, so Scope 1 are the direct emissions from the organizations. Like suppose if we are owning our own data center and the energy which is utilized in that, if we are burning any kind of fossil fuel, any
for example,
combustion happening, so all this is covered under Scope 1. Scope 2 are indirect emissions, which are electricity, steam, gas, cooling, whatever we buy from other organizations. And all other type of indirect emissions are covered under Scope 3. Like if somebody is using a personal transport in the organization, that comes under Scope 3. So this is, so while we understand basically what is Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, why don't you explain in terms of IT how it, it can be accounted
Sure.
under different scopes?
So if you look at it, the Scope 1 is the direct emission. So as an organization, if we have a data center, that data center has for diesel generators. So the diesel that we are using is Scope 1. If we are using transport for bringing our staff, our employees to the office, which is our own vehicles, fuel used in that is Scope 1. If we look at Scope 2, the easiest one is your energy, because it is the fossil fuel which is burned by your energy providers, the electricity providers. So whatever electricity we are using for running our office, for running our servers and anything that we are using, those are scope 2. And scope 3, which is quite a lot, comes from various other sources. Like for example, now how many of you are doing work from home? So those who are working from home, you are using your laptop at your home. As far as your organization is concerned, your laptop usage at home is also consuming energy and creating CO2. So that becomes your scope 3 emission. But other than that, there are more. Like for example, you are using the laptop. The manufacturing of the laptop creates a lot of energy consumption, a lot of carbon footprint creation. So that is your scope 3. And typically, a laptop or a desktop, 80 to 90% of the life cycle carbon footprint comes from the manufacturing and transportation. Only 10 to 15%. So the 240 kilowatt hour that I talked about, that is only 10 to 15% of that. A lot more, 85% of that has been already consumed, or that carbon footprint has been created when it got manufactured and it got transferred to us, right? So we have to start looking at it and account for it. Servers, it is a little bit different. Servers generally will have around 7,000 to 8,000 kilowatt hours per year of usage. In servers, it's only 10 to 15% is manufacturing, whereas 85 to 90% is your usage carbon footprint. So that is how we look at the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. That's one. The other part is when we dispose of the assets. Who has less than 4 laptops at home? I'm saying the total collection as per family. Less than 4 laptops. Okay, you are better. Generally, you will find at least a few laptops lying around which are not even being used. What do you do with that? When we dispose of that asset, a lot of it, if we are not properly disposing, it goes into landfills. And that creates a lot of toxic gases, which is also not carbon dioxide, but a lot of other, which creates an effect, negative effect on the environment. That also we have to see. So when we are looking at an organization, we are looking at the IT asset disposition, which also creates scope 3 emission, right?
So I think we have a better understanding of now what are those consumption points, what are those energy sources, what we need to look at, what is to be reduced. But the next question is that how do we do that? I mean, do we need to do new things, different things, or do we do things differently? So we already have our digital strategies in place in most of the organizations, and every organization is an IT organization. So what if we integrate sustainability into the life cycle and, make it sustainable digital strategies? Can we do that? So I think that can be done. And so basically we need to look at the process, the planning, implementation, and managing of digital initiatives where we can integrate sustainability into this entire process or the value chain. So when we say incorporating sustainability principles into the value chain, digital value chain, what are those areas that we look at? So these are the three-pronged. We can look at environmental impact, we can look at social responsibility, and we look at economic efficiency. So environmental impact, we can reduce, digital initiatives have a large carbon footprint, and environmental impact by reducing the energy consumption, definitely we can make a difference. We can switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. When we say social responsibility, we are talking about protecting user privacy and data. We are talking about promoting digital inclusion and accessibility, ensuring fair and responsible use of artificial intelligence and technology, the automation, and these all can be considered as the social impact of digital innovations. Similarly, when we say economic efficiency, we have to look how digital initiatives are economically viable. We have to support local economies. We have to look at optimizing processes and workflows through digitalization. And we need to consider the long-term financial viability and return on investment of our digital initiatives. So apart from these three, sustainable digital strategies also have a very positive impact on the overall health of the organization. So cost benefit is one major impact that can be attained by using energy efficient software and hardware. We can reduce the energy bills, through which the operational costs are reduced. Similarly, these days people want to join an organization where they can identify with their with their own thought processes. Yeah, they want to be aligned, so they want to join. And sustainability is one area which a lot of youngsters are looking at, and they want to be a part of the organization which is sustainable. So there also it helps. And there are other
So if you look at it, when we are talking about sustainability, as we see, we are talking about the environmental impact as one, but we are also looking at the social responsibility. We are looking at equity. We are looking at having everybody the same opportunity. We are looking at economic efficiency. All of these are coming together. And all of these, when we bring together, has a lot of advantage to the organization. So instead of thinking in terms of looking at just a cost benefit, if we practice sustainability, we get a lot of benefits. You want to talk about
So also, these days, where the organizations which are sustainable, they have a market reputation. It's a brand value, due to which there are increased market shares, more customers, the share market price increases. So it has a lot of benefits. Innovation and future readiness is another aspect. Digital strategies drive innovation and future readiness. See, if we are adopting emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, or blockchain, these can develop innovative solutions that address sustainability issues. So there are multiple facets to it, and it makes a lot more sense. So, Dr. Niladri, you are an expert when it comes to the new ways of working. And in your book that you published last 2 years back, Adapting to Industry Infinity, New Ways of Working for IT Services, you have written an entire chapter on sustainability. So how can we leverage technology to promote sustainability? I would like you to, speak a bit.
So in this, I will refer to a slide which Manjunath Bhatt had put forward in the morning in his keynote presentation. So he talked about the sustainable software. And when we talk about it, when we are looking at a digital sustainability strategy, it has to be all-encompassing. We have to think differently in terms of what is it that we are producing. So any product, any service that we are providing, it has to be thought in terms of how it can be more sustainable. So, as he mentioned in his slide, it has to be sustainability by design for new systems. It has to have energy efficient software. Is any of you doing green coding? Green coding? Okay. So you need to practice green coding. You need to look at sustainable data centers. You need to look at design thinking, keeping sustainability in mind. You need to have KPIs which are related to sustainability in the very outset of the digital transformation. That has to be a requirement at that point. You have to have KPIs related to that. Obviously, energy efficient architecture, low carbon energy sources, all those are there. So, if you look at all of these, we are talking about an all-encompassing scenario that we need to publish. And if we do that, what we see is, like for example, Adidas was able to identify material environmental issues they face based on the UN SDG goals and how each of these issues directly impacted their operations by leveraging data insights. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we find today is availability of sustainability related data. So while on one side till now we were talking about practicing IT in a sustainable manner, now we are also talking about IT enabling sustainability for business. We have to think in terms of how it is going to help the business to become more sustainable. We hear a lot about greenwashing. Do you think all this greenwashing and all is happening just because people are bad? Absolutely not. The reason is because data is not there. So a lot of it is aspirations rather than actuals what are happening. And it is IT which can enable that to avoid greenwashing. We need to look at, if we say that all our business processes are IT enabled, those are the processes which should bring in the data related to sustainability. If you look at another example, for using the AI and technology, Unilever is tracking supplier responsibility for palm oil production by understanding deforestation, human labor conditions, environmental damage. So now you see that how sustainability is converging with the business itself. And that's where your digital strategy has to include sustainability. Let us take a few case studies that we see on sustainability. And here I will be talking more in terms of like how just one aspect like a service mesh has helped in many organizations. So it's a large-scale cloud service provider. They have reduced carbon footprint by optimizing energy consumption in cloud-native applications. So the company implemented a service mesh architecture across their cloud infrastructure to optimize energy usage. Use service mesh to collect real-time data on application performance, resolution, resource utilization, and energy consumption. Leveraging this data, they implemented intelligent traffic routing algorithms within the service mesh to dynamically allocate application workloads to the most energy efficient servers. Additionally, they utilized service mesh features like circuit breaking and request throttling to prevent excessive resource usage, further reducing energy consumption. The result was a significant reduction in carbon emission. Now, we do this from the technology point of view. But now what we are doing is we are changing the mindset to think from the point of view of sustainability. Sustainability is about changing the mindset. It is not about technology. Technology we all know, technology we all have, technology we all can use. Just that we have to see how that can help from the point of view of sustainability. If you look at another case study, a transportation and logistics company. So minimize fuel consumption and carbon emission by optimizing traffic routing for microservices in their delivery operations. So the company employed a service mesh to optimize traffic routing for their microservice-based delivery system by integrating the service mesh with their location tracking and fleet management system, which are made out of microservices. They gained real-time visibility into vehicle positions, traffic conditions, and package delivery statuses. The service mesh dynamically routed requests to the most optimal microservice instances based on vehicle location, traffic congestion, and package delivery requirements. This allowed them to optimize the routes, minimize fuel consumption, reduce carbon emissions. The service mesh also provided advanced monitoring and observability features, enabling them to continuously analyze and fine-tune their traffic routing strategies for further efficiency gain. Now here again, all these that we are talking about is technology which we all know, we all do. The point is how we are blending it with the business. How we are thinking from the point of view of how to make sustainability in business more enabled. Right? That is the challenge. That is what we have to start thinking of. So we have a few more case stories that are there, which I will also talk about. So, for example, IT department of an organization using dynamic traffic routing and load balancing to reduce carbon footprint. Now, in this, the company's service mesh implementation incorporates dynamic traffic routing and load balancing techniques. So, intelligently distributing incoming requests across multiple service instances based on factors like resource availability, latency, and other performance metrics. The service mesh ensures optimal resource utilization. This reduces the need for over-provisioned resources, leading to better energy efficiency and reduced carbon emission. Additionally, the service mesh can automatically scale services up and down based on demand, further optimizing resource consumption and minimizing energy waste. Now, we are looking at it from the resource consumption of the servers, fair enough. What about also bringing in the algorithm to ensure that looking at what is the current mix of renewable and non-renewable energy in your data centers, move the workload from one data center in one particular region to a data center in another particular region. Can we think of that? Yes, we can. Can we look at what is the optimal utilization of the servers? Looking at the utilization of the servers, can you move it to servers which is less utilized? Do you know what is the average utilization of testing servers previous to cloud? On-prem testing servers. Average utilization. Anyone? Anybody else? No one? The answer is right. So Gartner did a 2018 survey. I think 2018 or 2017 they did a survey. And they found that the average utilization of a testing server in the EMEA region was 20%. I myself have done a study of a European bank, and in 2018, their average utilization of the testing server was 7%. Their target in 2019 was to become 20%. Whether you use the server or not, you are consuming energy. Using the new technology, how can we start thinking in terms of building those and use it so that we can do more work with the same amount of energy consumption that we are doing? Right? We have to start thinking from that point of view. So these are kind of things that we are going to look at. So if we look at all of these, one area that we are looking at is also the circular economy, where we are saying that we have to rethink in terms of how we are using it. So those who are getting your laptops from your office, how frequently do you get a new laptop? 5 years? Anybody else less than that? 3 years, right? We are technology people. We get upset if we don't get it after 3 years. It is obsolete, right? The point is, we have to start thinking of increasing it. If we are getting it in 3 years, can we do it in 5 years? Why? Because you are creating a lot of not only the toxic thing, but you are also using up a lot of the minerals, the rare earth materials like the cobalt and cadmium and other things. Do you know how much of gold is there in your laptops and mobile phones? It is said that if you take like 100 grams of gold ore, the amount of pure gold that you get out of that, you will get more amount of pure gold if you take the equal amount of metals from all your motherboards. There is an organization, IT asset disposition organization in Sweden, which is called the digital gold mine of Sweden. It produces so much of gold. The point is, the more and more new things we need more new and new extraction of such metals, which again is not sustainable. You must have heard that Apple has said that in the next version of Apple iPhone, it is going to have 100% reusable metals. It is not going to. But at one point of time, the metals properties also will start decreasing. So we have to see that. We have to think in terms of, it's not just move 3 years to 5 years, move the 5 years of servers to 7 years. The point is, can you remove certain parts only and keep it going so that it can go and you can still utilize? How many of you faced a difficulty with your mobile phones, that you have used the mobile phone, now a new version of some software that you use comes and your mobile doesn't allow that to get installed? Have you faced that? Right? We get that obsolescence, right? That is a challenge that we face with technology. So we have to see that our product vendors should also provide us. We have to make in our procurement those contracts where we say that, hey, you need to make sure that whatever you are providing us, we are going to be able to use it, and you give the warranty for 5 years instead of the 3 years. So a lot of policy matters also comes into play when we look at that, right? So if you look at this circular economy, we are talking about the design of the product. Fairphone, and even Nokia, I think a couple of months back, said that they are going to have phones which you can keep upgrading by changing parts, not like the current ones where you cannot even open the mobile phone to take out your battery to change it. Once it is done, throw it away. You have to look at production and remanufacturing. You have to look at distribution, how to distribute it with lesser transport, consumption, how we consume that, repair, reuse, collection, recycling. So everything needs a new way of thinking. It's not a new technology. It is about new way of thinking. So IT is becoming as an enabler of sustainability in business. We need to strategize this whole thing, because if we do not strategize, we cannot start off with something new like this, right? So if you look at the strategy, how do we start off? We have to start with an objective, a vision. What is the first thing that we enter when we want to start a Google map? Destination, where we want to go, right? So that is your vision. So you have to define your vision of minimizing waste, improving capacity, reducing rework and outages. Again, Gartner long time back had a survey which said that on an average 70% of a project cost is rework cost. If 70% is rework cost, forget about the cost part of it. That means 70% of rework. If you are doing 70% of rework, what does it mean? It means 70% of more energy consumption and carbon footprint creation. If we can reduce that 70% further, we are going to be able to reduce carbon footprint, right? Again, another way of thinking. And now if you see, if you reduce all those, if you do things better, you are going to be able to even improve on your cost. So your cost out transformation also gets helped because of sustainability, right? So we need to look at energy efficient infrastructure like server virtualization, cloud computing, energy efficient data centers, cloud native architecture, green coding. Here, how many of you have seen valve-based TVs? You know what is valve-based TVs? How many of you have seen? How many of you have not seen? Okay. So we had valve-based TVs. Now we have LED. The energy consumption of those valve-based TVs were much higher than the LED TVs today. So in IT also, we have to start looking at using new technology. We cannot hold on to old technology. We have to say, when you buy your products, electronic products, don't you buy with a star rating? Will you buy a 2-star rating product? You will buy a 5-star rating product, right? So you have to start looking at that. You need to integrate data and sustainability initiatives. Data is a big area of concern. First, we don't take decisions based on data because proper data is not available. So you must have heard a new post that has come up. There's a study by some university and it says that the LLMs are becoming dumber. So when ChatGPT kind of thing, when it tried to identify a prime number, earlier it was 67% and now it has become 37%. They are able to identify. They are not able to identify even 67% anymore because it is about the data that is going in. The learning that is happening is with bad data. We have to start thinking from those point of view. So data-driven decision making, faster feedback and faster improvement. If you have, as I said, if you have the data available, you will be able to have reduce and remove greenwashing. If you look at sustainability focused applications, you will be able to do better. And as I said, data today is not offline, data is online. The more crisper data we have, the more cleaner data we have, we get better result. Even if we are using AI, ML, you have to look at it. Now tell me, how fast do we need to train our LLM models? Should it be done like every day? Should it be done every day? Training of LLMs? No, you don't. Is that so much of a change that is happening every day to make it learn? Maybe in the initial stages yet, yes. But down the line, can you change it to a 3 months or a 6 months cycle of training the LLMs? We have to start thinking from those point of view. We need to have a data which is across different organizations, which is across different geography, which is cutting with bringing the different ecosystem into the play. That is what we need to identify. So Gartner has mentioned that 61% of respondents indicated that strategy is one of the top activities affected by sustainability because it has to start at the strategy level. And that's why we have to start with the strategy. So we are talking about digital transformation to minimize waste, to improve capacity, to reduce rework and outages. We are talking about energy efficient infrastructure. We are talking about integrating data and sustainability as we talked about. Right? So if you see this cyber security again becomes a usage. I would not specify cyber security, I would rather call it resilience. Whether it is a normal outage, whether it is a vulnerability related outages, anything which breaks in production, as IBM had mentioned once, it costs 100%, 100 times, not 100%, 100 times more than if it was caught in the early stages. So anything which breaks in production requires a huge amount of rework to be done to bring it back to normal state, right? Now, here we start thinking, when we talk about sustainability, we start thinking how to take care of it. How are we going to bring it back faster? Isn't that what resilience is about? So you start architecting it. You start making sure that if anything breaks, we have a much smaller blast radius. Only small portion breaks. Taking care of that. So you need distributed architecture. You need distributed database. You need to start thinking from that. If you see this slide from McKinsey survey, if you see, the reason why I put it is, if you see the communication, media and services, banking, investment services, government, the technology related carbon footprint is huge, not anything else. So IT, as IT practitioners, we cannot stay away from this. We have to take responsibility of this. And another myth that we break, again from McKinsey, unlike people talks about and we think that data centers is the biggest area of carbon footprint creation. It is not. What is the biggest area? The end user devices. And the end user devices are increasing. Your IoTs, your mobiles, your laptops, everything. Those are the areas which is creating that. So let us think how to take care of that.
So I think we are convinced that there is no alternative to adopting the sustainable practices and integrating it in the framework to get the sustainable digital strategy. The major challenge is, in terms of aligning the objectives, the resource optimization, managing the risks, managing the stakeholders, and driving continuous improvement and managing the outcomes. So, is there a way out? I mean, do we have some kind of a blueprint or a roadmap through which we can do this?
Yeah. So today, the board has the responsibility of reducing carbon footprint. The laws, the regulations, everything is coming there, even sustainable finance. I mean, we have some speakers down the line talking about sustainable finance and all. Funding even is not given if it is not sustainable, right? So if you look at that, we need a strategy. We need a blueprint to go ahead. As I was asking, that when you make a map, what do you need? You need first to talk about the destination. What is the second information that you put in Google Map? From where you start. It generally comes with the current location, but you can change that. Only when you have where you want to go and where you are, then only you will be able to create the map. So here also we need that. So we need the vision and objectives. But after that, what we need is to have a current state assessment. So we have created a sustainable IT capability model which can be used for assessment. Once you do the assessments, then you put those objectives, define those KPIs, and you set your OKRs. And we are using a company like Profit.io product, which helps you to set up those
Profit.co.
OKRs. Profit.co product. You set up the OKRs, starting from the board to the CIO, ultimately down to the team, and manage the performance. We need to look at risk management. because it is a business risk. As we have heard, that it is a business risk because number one, competition wants it, talent acquisition is a problem. Number three is, you must have heard last month, Microsoft, one of the centers was down, one of the data centers was down because the climate was hot enough and the cooling failed. So all those gets into play. So we need this to be part of your normal business risk management. As I said, we need a collaboration and ecosystem engagement without which it doesn't work. And finally, we need to continuously improve. And that's why I don't talk about a maturity model, I talk about a capability model. However good we are, we can still improve, right? So, yep.
Yeah. So we see that the entire world is talking about sustainability now. Companies are declaring their net zero targets, but very few. I mean, we do not know where to start from. It is quite vague. So it is a big area, and IT has a role to play. The technology leaders have to do a lot. And yeah, so I think with this talk, I'm sure that we have a starting point defined how we can do that through a strategy framework. We can define how do we start and how do we, manage the outcomes and, some point to start with. So only talking at high level will not help. We have to start at the ground level, and that is where, digital strategy blueprint helps. So, yeah, I think all of us need to take a pledge that we have to incorporate sustainable way of living. We have to change our mindsets and practice sustainable IT for sure at our work. So, with this, thanks to Dr. Niladri, he has explained it really well. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
We can take it even offline.
Yeah.
We are here. And if you are
We can
interested in learning more on sustainable IT, you can go to our booth because we have a sustainable IT practitioner course also available, which I have curated specifically, and working with Singapore FinTech Academy to launch it here. So if you are interested, you can look at that. Okay?
You want to ask a question to the audience?
Yeah. So what is the percentage that Gartner mentioned that sustainable, just before I complete the question, Manjunath cannot answer that. So what is the percentage that the people felt that, the survey said that sustainability is affecting the strategy? No. 61%. So, we have the book somewhere? No, the other book.
Yeah, that's the book.
Yeah. So, Bhaskaran, you can come over.
You can give.
Thank you. So while he takes the book, the second question, in my speech, it was not
Padma,
picture.
take a picture.
The other is, it was not on the slide, but I mentioned what is the current percentage of IT having the carbon footprint. What is the overall carbon footprint for IT? No. Overall carbon footprint. What percentage did I mention? Globally, what is the overall carbon footprint? No. Not 6, 7. Sorry? 4%, yes.
So, she wins. You get the book?
She said 14.
Okay.
Okay.
So who was The nearest.
Okay, let me ask a more simpler question. I gave some case studies, and the case studies were using a particular technology. Service mesh. I knew technical people will definitely get the technical part. But service mesh is just one thing.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, there are
So what's your
multiple
name?
other things which is like,
Asankhya.
even in Kubernetes and all we have to look at. If you look at Kubernetes, a flight from India, Mumbai to New York, the amount of carbon footprint that it creates by the flight, the same amount of carbon footprint is created by 400 Kubernetes clusters. Now imagine BMW saying that we have our cars runs on 13,000 Kubernetes clusters. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. So, we are available. We can always discuss further. Thank you.